In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless species have risen and fallen, where empires span star systems and trade routes connect civilizations separated by light years, there exists one universal truth that every intelligent being understands: never, under any circumstances, harm the young of another species during diplomatic contact. This isn't just courtesy. This isn't just politics. This is survival. Because somewhere in the spiral arms of this galaxy, there's a species that doesn't follow the usual rules. A species that doesn't negotiate when their young are threatened. A species that doesn't send diplomats or file complaints with the Galactic Council. They send fleets. Commander Zethkar thought he understood humans. After all, his intelligence reports were thorough. Bipedal mammals from a small blue world, recently discovered, primitive technology, no significant military presence in their local sector. Easy targets for resource extraction and labor acquisition. The reports failed to mention one crucial detail: what happens when you take their children? Now, as Zethkar stares at his tactical display showing 847 human warships dropping out of hyperspace around his impregnable fortress world, he's about to learn why every other species in the galaxy has a simple rule when dealing with humans: don't touch their young. The communication channel crackles to life, and a cold human voice cuts through the static. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. You have something that belongs to us. Return our children, and your deaths will be quick. In the next few hours, Zethkar will discover that humans don't just love their young. They're willing to burn the galaxy for them. The research station New Horizon orbited the gas giant Kepler 442c like a silver needle threading through cosmic silk. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the observation deck's transparent aluminum window, watching the swirling storms of methane and hydrogen paint abstract masterpieces across the planet's surface. Behind her, 23 children between the ages of 8 and 16 worked at various stations, their voices creating a gentle symphony of curiosity and discovery. This was humanity's first deep space educational expedition, a bold initiative to show the galaxy that Earth's newest generation would be explorers, not conquerors. The children came from every continent, every background, united by their exceptional aptitude for science and their parents' faith in humanity's future among the stars. Dr. Vasquez, look at this, called out Marcus Chen, a 12-year-old prodigy whose parents had immigrated from Beijing. His dark eyes sparkled with excitement as he manipulated a holographic display showing the gas giant's magnetic field. The auroras here are 10 times more intense than anything on Earth. If we could harness even a fraction of this energy. Elena smiled, her maternal instincts warming at the boy's enthusiasm. She had no children of her own, but these young minds had become her family over the past 6 months. Excellent observation, Marcus. What do you think causes the intensity difference? Before Marcus could answer, the station's proximity alarms began shrieking. Red lights bathed the observation deck as Elena's communication device buzzed frantically. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the static, all hands to emergency stations. Unknown vessels approaching at high velocity. This is not a drill. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. The nearest human patrol was 3 days away. No other known species operated in this sector. Through the observation window, she could see them now, dark shapes emerging from the void like predatory fish rising from an ocean's depths. The ships were unlike anything in the human databases, organic-looking hulls that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm, weapon ports that glowed with malevolent energy. Everyone stay calm, Elena announced, though her own voice betrayed her fear. Move to the emergency shelter. Remember your drills. The children responded with the discipline they had practiced hundreds of times, but Elena could see the terror in their eyes. 16-year-old Sarah Kim, the eldest of the group, helped corral the younger ones while casting worried glances at the alien ships. Dr. Vasquez, who are they? I don't know, sweetheart, Elena whispered, ushering them toward the reinforced shelter that served as the station's safe room. But, we're going to be fine. Captain Rodriguez knows what to do. Even as she spoke the words, Elena knew they were a lie. The research station had minimal defenses, just enough to ward off space debris and micrometeorites. Against a coordinated alien attack, they were helpless. The first impact sent shockwaves through the station's superstructure. Emergency lighting flickered as the artificial gravity fluctuated, causing several children to stumble. Through the corridor's viewports, Elena could see sleek fighter craft swarming around the station like angry wasps, their weapons carving precise holes in the outer hull. They're not trying to destroy us, Elena realized with growing horror. They're trying to board us. The shelter's heavy door sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, but Elena knew it would only buy them time. The 23 children huddled together in the cramped space, their young faces illuminated by the emergency lighting's crimson glow. Some were crying quietly. Others maintained a brave silence that broke Elena's heart. Dr. Vasquez, whispered 10-year-old Aisha Okafor, her English accented with the lilting tones of her Nigerian heritage. Are the aliens going to hurt us? Elena knelt beside the frightened girl, choosing her words carefully. Some aliens might not understand that we're peaceful explorers. But, remember what we learned about first contact protocols. We stay calm, we're polite, and we show them that humans are reasonable beings. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the shelter's walls. Heavy footsteps approached their position. Elena positioned herself between the children and the door, knowing it was futile but unable to abandon her protective instincts. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Through the smoke stepped creatures that would haunt Elena's nightmares for years to come. They stood nearly 8 feet tall on digitigrade legs, their bodies covered in natural armor plates that gleamed like polished obsidian. Their faces were reptilian, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and mouths filled with serrated teeth. Most disturbing were their hands' 6-fingered appendages that ended in razor-sharp claws. The lead creature spoke through a translator device attached to its throat, its voice a mechanical approximation of human speech. Greetings, mammals. I am Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony's 3rd Expansion Fleet. You will comply with our requirements. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, Scientific Director of this research station. We are peaceful explorers from Earth, operating under the auspices of the Galactic Accords. We demand to know your intentions. Zethkar's translator emitted what might have been laughter. Your demands are irrelevant, mammal. We have studied your species. You are primitive, weak, lacking any significant military presence in this sector. You will serve the hegemony's needs. What needs? Elena asked, though she dreaded the answer. Your young show promise, Zethkar replied, his 4 eyes focusing on the huddled children. They will be educated in proper civilized behavior, trained to serve the hegemony's expansion efforts. Consider it an honor. Few species are deemed worthy of cultural integration. The words hit Elena like physical blows. You're talking about slavery. We are talking about purpose, Zethkar corrected. Your species lacks direction, wastes its potential on meaningless exploration. Under hegemony guidance, these young ones will contribute to galactic civilization. Behind Elena, 16-year-old Sarah Kim stood up, her voice shaking but defiant. We're not going anywhere with you, monster. Zethkar's attention shifted to the teenager, and Elena saw something predatory in his posture. Your spirit will be broken, young mammal. The hegemony has methods for dealing with uncooperative specimens. Elena felt rage building in her chest, a mother's fury that overrode her scientific training and survival instincts. They're children, not specimens. They have families, dreams, lives waiting for them on Earth. Earth is irrelevant, Zethkar stated. Your primitive world exists only at the hegemony's sufferance. These young ones represent your species' future. Under our guidance, they will achieve greatness. Without it, they are merely wasted potential. The alien commander gestured to his subordinates, who began advancing on the children with restraint devices. Elena threw herself at the nearest soldier, her fists pounding uselessly against its armored hide. A casual backhand sent her sprawling, her head ringing from the impact. Do not resist, Zethkar advised as his soldiers began separating the children from each other, placing neural restraints around their necks that would ensure compliance. Your sacrifice enables their elevation. This is the way of the galaxy, the strong guide the weak toward purpose. Elena struggled to her feet, watching in helpless horror as the children were fitted with the alien devices. Marcus Chen's eyes had gone blank and distant. Aisha Okafor stood motionless, her natural spirit suppressed by the neural inhibitor's influence. One by one, the bright minds that represented humanity's future were reduced to docile puppets. "You don't understand," Elena gasped, tasting blood from her split lip. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I understand perfectly," Zethkar replied. "We are claiming resources that would otherwise be wasted. Your species will thank us for this intervention." As the aliens herded the children toward their transport ship, Elena made one final desperate plea. "Please, I'm begging you. Take me instead. Take all the adults on this station. Just leave the children alone." Zethkar paused at the doorway, his 4 eyes regarding her with something that might have been pity. "Adults are set in their ways, difficult to reprogram. The young are malleable, adaptable. They will forget their primitive origins and embrace their new purpose. This is a kindness, mammal. We could have simply eliminated your entire species." The shelter fell silent except for Elena's ragged breathing and the distant sound of the alien ships preparing for departure. Through the destroyed doorway, she could see the research station's corridors filled with smoke and debris. Most of the adult crew had been killed during the initial assault, their bodies scattered throughout the facility. Elena crawled to the communication console, her hands shaking as she activated the emergency beacon. The hyperspace transmitter had enough power for one message to reach Earth, one chance to warn humanity about what was coming. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez aboard Research Station New Horizon," she whispered into the transmitter, knowing that by the time her message reached Earth, she would likely be dead. "Unknown alien force has attacked our position. 23 children taken prisoner, presumed destination unknown. Species designation, reptilian, technologically advanced, refer to themselves as the hegemony. They view humans as primitive resources to be exploited." Elena paused, watching through the viewport as the alien ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, carrying away the brightest young minds of her species. "Tell their parents, tell them their children were brave. Tell them we tried. And tell Admiral Chen." Elena thought of Marcus, of his brilliant smile and endless curiosity, now suppressed by alien neural controls. "Tell her I'm sorry we couldn't protect her son." The communication console sparked and died as the station's power finally failed completely. Elena sat alone in the darkness, surrounded by the wreckage of humanity's first deep space educational mission. Outside, the alien ships vanished into hyperspace, taking with them 23 children who would never see Earth again. Or so Commander Zethkar believed. What the hegemony commander failed to understand was that humans had a peculiar relationship with their young. Unlike most species, which viewed offspring as genetic investments to be protected until reproductive maturity, humans formed emotional bonds that transcended biological imperatives. Human children were not just future adults, they were loved for their potential, their dreams, their unique perspectives on the universe. And, when humans loved something, they would cross any distance, face any enemy, pay any price to protect it. Elena Vasquez died 3 hours later when the station's life support finally failed, but her message had already begun its journey through hyperspace toward Earth. Toward a blue world where 23 families would soon learn that their children had been stolen. Toward military commanders who would discover that their carefully maintained peace with neighboring species meant nothing when human young were threatened. Toward Admiral Sarah Chen, whose 12-year-old son Marcus had just become the most important missing person in human history. The hegemony had made many conquests throughout the galaxy, subjugating dozens of species and incorporating their young into the Empire's vast cultural matrix. They had developed their tactics through centuries of experience, perfecting the art of selective harvest to minimize resistance while maximizing yield. But they had never encountered humans before. They had never faced a species that would declare war over 23 children. They had never met beings who considered the protection of their young to be worth any sacrifice, any cost, any risk to their own survival. Commander Zethkar settled into his command throne as his fleet jumped to hyperspace, already composing his report on the successful acquisition of human specimens. He anticipated commendations from the hegemony high command, perhaps even promotion to the rank of subjugator. The operation had proceeded flawlessly, with minimal resistance and valuable genetic material secured for the Empire's expansion efforts. He had no way of knowing that his flawless operation had just triggered the largest military mobilization in human history. That even now, emergency sessions were convening in every human government, defense contractors were activating emergency protocols, and Admiral Sarah Chen was staring at a holographic display showing the last known trajectory of her son's captors. The hegemony had captured 23 human children, believing them to be a minor resource acquisition from a primitive species. They were about to discover that they had kidnapped the offspring of the galaxy's most dangerous predator. And predators do terrible things to those who threaten their young. Admiral Sarah Chen stood motionless in the center of Earth's strategic command, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed Dr. Vasquez's final transmission. Around her, the most powerful military leaders in human space maintained respectful silence as the recording played for the third time. The Admiral's composed exterior betrayed nothing of the volcanic rage building beneath the surface. "Ma'am," whispered Commander Torres, her aide-de-camp, "shall we proceed with standard diplomatic protocols?" Sarah's voice, when it came, was glacier cold. "Commander, what exactly would you classify as standard about this situation?" "Admiral, I only meant 23 children, Commander. 23 of our brightest young minds, stolen from a peaceful research mission. My son among them." Sarah turned to face the assembled officers, and several took unconscious steps backward from the fury in her eyes. Does anyone here believe this calls for diplomatic protests and bureaucratic hand-wringing? General Morrison, the grizzled commander of Earth's Marine Corps, cleared his throat. "Admiral, with respect, we don't know the location of this hegemony, their military capabilities, or their intentions." "A measured response might, General," Sarah interrupted, her voice cutting through his words like a monofilament blade. "Let me ask you a question. How many of your grandchildren were on that research station?" Morrison's face hardened. "None, ma'am." "Then, you don't understand the parameters of this situation." Sarah moved to the central command console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Computer, display current status of all human military assets." The air above the conference table shimmered, revealing a three-dimensional map of human space. Green dots represented active fleet positions, blue indicated defensive installations, red showed manufacturing centers. It was an impressive display of humanity's rapid expansion over the past century, but Sarah saw only inadequacy. "Total active warships?" she asked. 437 vessels of destroyer class and above, the computer replied in its neutral tone. Additionally, 1,612 smaller patrol craft and system defense platforms. Sarah nodded grimly. "Mobilization time for full fleet assembly?" "Estimated 6 weeks for complete mobilization, Admiral." "Unacceptable." Sarah's fingers flew across the interface again. "Computer, activate emergency production protocols. All civilian shipyards are hereby commandeered for military production. Implement draft registration for all citizens aged 18 to 45. Begin immediate recruitment drives in all colonial systems." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Admiral Kozlov, the elderly director of Colonial Defense, stepped forward with obvious alarm. "Sarah, you're talking about total military mobilization. The economic impact alone will be irrelevant when our children are being tortured by alien slavers," Sarah snapped. "Admiral Kozlov, how many grandchildren do you have?" The old man's face paled. 4, but how would you feel if they disappeared tomorrow, taken by creatures who view them as livestock to be trained for servitude?" Sarah's voice rose, carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Would you worry about economic impact then?" Kozlov fell silent, but Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes, the hesitation that she knew was shared by others in the room. They didn't understand yet. They still thought this was a military problem with political solutions. "All of you," Sarah said, her voice now carrying the absolute authority of her rank, seem to be operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. You believe this is about rescuing 23 children. You think we're planning a retrieval operation." Sarah activated another holographic display, this one showing Earth itself, the blue marble that had given birth to humanity's expansion into the stars. "This is about species survival. These aliens studied us, evaluated us, and concluded that we are weak enough to be harvested for our young. They believe humans are primitive animals whose offspring can be stolen without consequence." General Morrison straightened. "Admiral, what are you proposing? I'm proposing we correct their misconception. Sarah's smile was utterly without warmth. Computer, open communication channel to all human colonies, all research stations, all diplomatic posts. Priority Alpha 0 authorization. The display shifted to show communication links stretching across dozens of star systems. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the words she was about to speak would echo through human history. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, this is Admiral Sarah Chan, speaking with the full authority of the Human Defense Council. 12 hours ago, an unknown alien species calling itself the Hegemony attacked our research station New Horizon and kidnapped 23 children. These aliens view our young as resources to be harvested, our species as primitive animals unworthy of basic respect. Sarah paused, allowing her words to sink in across human space. In living rooms on Mars, in mining stations around Jupiter, in the colonial farms of Alpha Centauri, human families were gathering around communication screens, their faces growing hard as they absorbed the news. Effective immediately, all human space is under martial law. Every shipyard, every factory, every resource extraction facility is now dedicated to a single purpose: building the largest military force in galactic history. We will find these aliens. We will rescue our children. And we will ensure that no species ever again mistakes human compassion for weakness. The communication channel remained open as Sarah continued, her voice now carrying across 23 star systems. To the parents of the stolen children, know that every human alive will move heaven and earth to bring them home. To our allies among the galactic community, you have 48 hours to provide any intelligence you possess about this hegemony, or you will be considered complicit in this crime against humanity. Sarah took another breath, her next words destined to terrify half the galaxy. And, to the hegemony itself, if you can hear this transmission, return our children immediately, unharmed, and your deaths will be quick. Continue to hold them, and we will hunt you across every star system, burn your worlds to ash, and ensure your species serves as an example to any others who might threaten human young. You have taken the offspring of apex predators. Pray to whatever gods you worship that you comprehend the magnitude of your mistake. The communication channel closed, leaving the strategic command chamber in absolute silence. Sarah turned back to her assembled officers, noting that their earlier hesitation had been replaced by grim determination. Admiral, General Morrison said quietly, "What are your orders?" Sarah moved to the holographic fleet display, studying the positioning of human forces with new eyes. Begin immediate recall of all deep space exploration vessels. Convert every civilian transport capable of mounting weapons systems. Contact our intelligence assets in neutral space. I want to know everything about alien species operating near human territory. She manipulated the display, highlighting manufacturing centers throughout human space. Double production schedules on all military hardware. If our workers need stimulants to maintain pace, provide them. If our shipyards need additional raw materials, requisition every mining operation in human space. Commander Torres made rapid notes on her datapad. Admiral, the Galactic Accords specifically prohibit this level of militarization. The Council, Sarah replied with icy precision, can register their complaints after we've recovered our children. Until then, humanity withdraws from all galactic treaties and agreements. We operate under our own authority now. Admiral Kozlov stepped forward again, his earlier hesitation replaced by understanding. Sarah, you're talking about going to war with an unknown enemy. We don't even know where they are. We'll find them, Sarah stated with absolute certainty. And, when we do, they'll discover what happens when you threaten a human child. Computer, begin analysis of the attack pattern on New Horizon. I want trajectory calculations, hyperspace wake analysis, anything that might indicate their destination. The computer's response was immediate. Analysis indicates enemy fleet departed on heading 127.3 Mark 85.6, hyperspace signature consistent with biomechanical technology. Estimated maximum range before refueling, 47 light-years. Sarah smiled grimly. That narrows it down considerably. Commander Torres, contact our deepest reconnaissance assets. Begin systematic survey of all star systems within 50 light-years of New Horizon. Look for any signs of advanced civilization, particularly biomechanical technology signatures. As her officers dispersed to carry out their orders, Sarah remained alone in the command center, staring at the three-dimensional map of human space. Soon, that map would change. The green dots representing peaceful research stations and trade vessels would become red markers of military might. The blue defensive installations would multiply until human space resembled a fortress rather than an explorer's domain. But, first, she needed to make a personal call. Sarah activated her private communication terminal and connected to a residential address on Luna Colony. After a few moments, the face of Dr. Richard Chen appeared on the screen. Her former husband looked older than she remembered, his hair now completely gray, but his eyes still held the same gentle intelligence that had first attracted her decades ago. "Sarah," Richard said softly, "I heard the news. How are you holding up?" Sarah felt her composed facade crack slightly. "He's out there, Richard. Our boy is out there with those creatures, and I don't know what they're doing to him." Richard's face hardened with paternal fury. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to understand what's about to happen," Sarah replied. "I'm going to mobilize every ship, every weapon, every soldier humanity possesses. I'm going to find our son and bring him home, no matter what it costs." "And if the galactic community objects?" Sarah's expression grew cold again. "Then, they'll discover that humans make very dangerous enemies. Richard, I want you to take the civilian evacuation ships to the outer colonies. If this escalates into full galactic war, Earth needs to be protected." "I'm not leaving," Richard stated firmly. "Marcus is my son too. If you're preparing for war, then I'll do my part here." Sarah nodded, having expected no less from the man who had helped raise their brilliant, curious son. "Thank you." "And, Richard? When we get Marcus back, we need to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. What are you thinking?" Sarah turned back to the galactic map, her mind already calculating the resources needed to reshape human civilization from peaceful explorers to galactic enforcers. "I'm thinking it's time the galaxy learned to respect human young. All human young, everywhere, forever." As Sarah ended the call, reports began flowing in from across human space. Shipyard production had increased by 300% in the first 6 hours. Military recruitment offices were overwhelmed by volunteers, many of them parents who understood exactly what was at stake. Colonial governors were implementing emergency economic measures, redirecting every available resource toward the military buildup. But, most importantly, human intelligence networks were coming alive throughout the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humanity as naive newcomers suddenly found themselves facing very pointed questions about the hegemony's location and capabilities. Trade relationships that had taken decades to build were sacrificed for any scrap of information that might lead to the kidnappers. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that every predator species understood instinctively: never threaten the young of another predator unless you're prepared to face the consequences. Sarah Chan stood in Earth's strategic command, watching as humanity transformed itself from a peaceful confederation of explorers into something far more dangerous. Around her, the greatest military minds in human space worked with focused intensity, planning operations that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Marcus Chen was 12 years old, brilliant beyond his years, and currently in the hands of aliens who viewed him as property to be trained and exploited. His mother was Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of humanity's military forces and now the most dangerous individual in known space. The hegemony had captured a human child. They were about to face a human mother. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks after the attack on New Horizon, the transformation of human space was complete. What had once been a peaceful confederation of explorers and traders now resembled the military infrastructure of a species preparing for total war. Every shipyard from Earth to the Tau Ceti colonies worked around the clock, their assembly lines producing vessels of war with an efficiency that shocked even humanity's allies. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the HMS Retribution, one of the new Vengeance-class destroyers that had been constructed in record time. Through the main view screen, she could see the assembled human defense fleet, 847 warships arranged in perfect formation around Earth. It was the largest military force ever assembled by a single species in galactic history. But Admiral Chen wanted more. "Captain Voss," came the Admiral's voice through the communication system, "report to the flagship for final briefing." We jumped to hyperspace in 6 hours. Elena made her way through the fleet in a military shuttle, observing the controlled chaos of final preparations. Supply ships moved between the larger vessels like worker bees, loading everything from medical supplies to quantum torpedoes. Fighter squadrons conducted final practice runs, their sleek forms cutting through space with predatory grace. The fleet's flagship, HMS Revenge, dwarfed every other vessel in the formation. Built from the hull of a partially completed colony ship, it had been transformed into a mobile command center bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Its construction had required the combined resources of 6 different worlds, and its completion in less than 3 weeks represented the greatest engineering achievement in human history. Elena was escorted to the flagship's main briefing room, where she joined 200 other ship commanders. At the front of the room, Admiral Chen stood before a holographic display showing star charts and intelligence reports. The Admiral looked like she hadn't slept in weeks, but her eyes burned with undiminished fury. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Chen began, "3 weeks ago, our children were stolen by an alien species that views humanity as livestock to be harvested. Today, we begin the hunt that will either rescue our young or ensure that no species ever again mistakes human compassion for weakness." The display shifted to show the trajectory analysis from New Horizons' destruction. "Our intelligence services have identified the hegemony's most likely destination, a star system designated XK739, approximately 41 light-years from the attack site. Long-range reconnaissance confirms the presence of a heavily fortified world with biomechanical technology signatures consistent with our attackers." Elena studied the tactical display, noting the impressive defensive installations surrounding the alien world. Multiple space stations, orbital weapons platforms, and what appeared to be a significant fleet presence. "Admiral," she called out, "intelligence estimates on enemy strength?" "Substantial," Admiral Chan replied grimly. "The hegemony appears to be a major galactic power with significant military assets. Their technology is comparable to our own, possibly superior in some areas. Under normal circumstances, a direct assault on their fortress world would be considered suicide." Murmurs rippled through the assembled captains. Elena could see doubt creeping into some faces, the natural caution of military professionals assessing an overwhelming enemy force. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the whispers like a blade. "However, these are not normal circumstances. We are not conducting a normal military operation. We are parents retrieving stolen children, and there is no force in the galaxy more dangerous than a human parent protecting their young." The doubt vanished, replaced by grim determination. Elena felt it herself, the primal fury that transcended military training and strategic thinking. Her own daughter was grown and safe on Mars, but the thought of some alien creature laying hands on a human child filled her with rage that demanded satisfaction. "Our strategy is simple," Admiral Chen continued. "We will jump directly into the XK739 system and demand the immediate return of our children. If the hegemony complies, we will withdraw and consider the matter closed. If they refuse, we will demonstrate why threatening human young is a terminal error in judgment." Captain Martinez of the HMS Fury raised his hand. "Admiral, what about diplomatic protocols? The Galactic Council has been sending increasingly urgent demands for consultation." "The Galactic Council," Admiral Chen interrupted, "has had 3 weeks to pressure the hegemony into releasing our children. They have accomplished nothing except bureaucratic hand-wringing and calls for patience." "Captain Martinez, how patient would you be if aliens had kidnapped your son?" Martinez's face hardened. "I understand, Admiral." "Good. Because patience is a luxury we can no longer afford." Admiral Chen manipulated the display again, showing detailed tactical formations. "Upon arrival in the XK739 system, we will arrange ourselves in a standard intimidation pattern around their primary world. Our initial communication will give them exactly 1 hour to produce all 23 children, unharmed and ready for transport." Elena leaned forward. "And if they refuse?" Admiral Chen's smile was utterly without mercy. "Then, we will demonstrate the difference between a species that harvests young for labor and a species that burns galaxies to protect them. Fleet deployment will be Operation Broken Nest, simultaneous strikes on all military installations, communications arrays, and government facilities. We will reduce their defensive capabilities to 0 within the first 30 minutes.
The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in.
Elena had participated in dozens of military operations throughout her career, but never anything approaching this scale of destruction. They weren't planning a rescue mission, they were preparing to dismantle an entire civilization.
Admiral, Captain Torres of HMS Vengeance asked quietly, "What about civilian casualties?" "What about them?" Admiral Chan replied coldly. "Did the hegemony consider civilian casualties when they murdered Dr. Vasquez and her research team? Did they worry about collateral damage when they fitted neural restraints on 12-year-old Marcus Chin?"
The Admiral's voice rose with each word.
"The hegemony declared war on humanity the moment they decided our children were property to be stolen.
They will face the consequences of that decision." Elena understood the Admiral's position, but her military training demanded clarification.
"Ma'am, are we prepared for the galactic political ramifications?"
This level of aggressive action, Captain Voss, Admiral Chin interrupted. "Let me ask you a question.
If aliens had kidnapped every child in your home city, would you care about political ramifications?" Elena considered her own daughter, imagined her in the hands of the reptilian creatures from Dr. Vasquez's transmission.
The thought filled her with such rage that she had to grip her chair to maintain composure.
"No, Admiral. I would not."
"Then, you understand our position perfectly." Admiral Chan returned to the tactical display.
"The galaxy is about to learn that humans are not the peaceful, naive species they believed us to be. We are apex predators who have been playing by civilized rules.
The moment those rules failed to protect our young, we stopped playing by them."
Admiral Chan activated another display showing intelligence reports from across human space. "Our networks have spent 3 weeks gathering information about the hegemony's operations.
What we've discovered is that this was not an isolated incident. The hegemony routinely harvests young from primitive species, integrating them into their empire through neural conditioning and forced labor."
Elena felt sick. "How many species?"
17 confirmed cases over the past century, Admiral Chen replied.
"Hundreds of thousands of kidnapped children, all trained to serve the hegemony's expansion efforts.
The galaxy has tolerated this because the victims were small, weak species without significant military capability." Captain Martinez leaned forward.
"But we're different." "Yes, we are." Admiral Chan's voice carried absolute certainty.
"We have the industrial capacity to build fleets, the technological sophistication to fight on equal terms, and the psychological makeup to pursue vengeance regardless of cost. The hegemony chose the wrong species to harvest from."
Admiral Chan moved to a new section of the display, showing recent intelligence from human agents throughout the galaxy. "Our diplomatic networks report increasing concern among other major powers.
The Zephyrian Republic has offered to mediate negotiations. The Crystalline Collective has suggested arbitration through the Galactic Council. The Voidwalkers have even offered to serve as neutral escorts for a prisoner exchange."
Elena raised an eyebrow. "The Voidwalkers offered to help? They've never involved themselves in galactic politics."
"Apparently, even they recognize the danger of this situation," Admiral Chen replied. "Species across the galaxy are beginning to understand that if the hegemony can harvest human young without consequences, no species' children are safe.
They're terrified of setting a precedent that makes kidnapping acceptable." Captain Torres spoke up again. "Admiral, what if one of these other species offers genuine assistance in locating our children?"
"Then, we will accept their help gratefully," Admiral Chen replied.
"But we will not delay our operations waiting for diplomatic solutions.
Every hour our children remain in hegemony hands is another hour they're subjected to neural conditioning and forced indoctrination.
Time is our enemy as much as the aliens themselves." Admiral Chan activated the final section of her briefing, showing detailed profiles of each kidnapped child.
Elena recognized Marcus Chen immediately. The Admiral's son bore a strong resemblance to his mother, the same intelligent eyes and determined expression. The other children came from every corner of human space, brilliant young minds representing the future of their species. "These 23 individuals are why we're here," Admiral Chen said, her voice softening slightly.
"Not for territorial expansion, not for resource acquisition, not for political advantage. We're here because our children were stolen, and we will move heaven and earth to bring them home." Elena studied the faces on the display, memorizing each one. Sarah Kim, 16 years old, daughter of a terraforming engineer on New Sol. Aisha Okafor, 10 years old, whose parents ran a cultural exchange program between Earth and the African Union colonies. Marcus Chen, 12 years old, whose mother now commanded the largest military force in galactic history. Remember their faces, Admiral Chen commanded. Remember their names. Remember that they're counting on us to bring them home safely. And, remember that the galaxy is watching to see whether humanity will fight for its young or accept their loss as the price of galactic citizenship. The briefing room remained silent for several minutes, each captain absorbing the weight of responsibility they carried. Elena realized that this operation would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. They would either rescue their children and establish humans as a species not to be trifled with, or they would fail and forever be seen as weak creatures whose young could be harvested at will. Final preparations will be completed within 4 hours, Admiral Chen announced. We jump to hyperspace at 1800 hours, ship time. Upon arrival in the XK-739 system, all vessels will maintain communications silence until I give the order to open diplomatic channels. The hegemony will see our fleet before they hear our demands. Fear will be our first weapon. As the briefing concluded and captains returned to their ships, Elena remained behind to speak privately with Admiral Chen. The admiral looked exhausted, carrying the weight of an entire species' hopes and fears on her shoulders. Admiral, Elena said quietly, are you certain about this course of action? Once we attack, there's no going back. We'll be at war with a major galactic power. Admiral Chen turned to look out the flagship's main viewport, where the assembled human fleet stretched to the horizon. Captain Voss, let me ask you one final question. If we don't rescue these children, if we let the hegemony keep them and train them as slaves, what message does that send to every other species in the galaxy? Elena considered the question. That human young are free for the taking. Exactly. And that is a precedent we cannot allow to stand. Admiral Chen's voice carried the weight of absolute determination. The hegemony believes humans are primitive animals whose offspring can be harvested without consequence. In approximately 7 hours, they will discover their error. Elena saluted and departed for her own ship, her mind already focused on the coming battle. Around her, 847 human warships prepared for the largest rescue operation in galactic history. In the cargo bays, Marines checked their equipment and reviewed tactical plans. In the fighter squadrons, pilots ran final simulations and said prayers to various deities. And, in the flagship's command center, Admiral Sarah Chen stared at a photograph of her 12-year-old son and whispered a promise that would echo across the galaxy, "We're coming, Marcus. And, God help anyone who tries to stop us." The hegemony had stolen 23 human children. They were about to face 847 human warships commanded by the most dangerous force in the galaxy, a mother's love. Commander Zethkar stood in the central command chamber of Hegemony Fortress Prime, his 4 eyes focused on the tactical display that showed his empire's most heavily defended world. The massive space station orbited the planet Kethmore like a metal moon, its biomechanical structures pulsing with organic rhythm while bristling with enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. 300 warships patrolled the system's perimeter, their crews confident in their technological superiority and numerical advantage. It had been 3 weeks since the successful acquisition of human specimens from the research station. The young mammals were progressing well in their neural conditioning, their primitive emotional attachments slowly being replaced with proper loyalty to the hegemony. Soon they would join the ranks of other integrated species, serving the Empire's expansion efforts with the dedication that came from proper re-education. Zethkar reviewed the latest reports from the conditioning facilities with satisfaction. The human juveniles showed remarkable adaptability, their neural patterns responding well to the standardized integration protocols. Within another month, they would be ready for assignment to various imperial departments, scientific research, cultural analysis, diplomatic services. The investment in their capture was already paying dividends. "Commander," called out sensor technician Grabek from his station, "I'm detecting unusual hyperspace fluctuations at the system's edge. Multiple contacts emerging from jump space."
Zethkar's attention shifted to the sensor display, expecting to see a merchant convoy or perhaps a diplomatic mission from one of the hegemony's client species. Instead, the tactical screen erupted with warning indicators as contact after contact materialized from hyperspace. "Computer, identify incoming vessels," Zethkar commanded, his voice remaining steady despite a growing sense of unease. "Analysis in progress," the ship's artificial intelligence replied. "Initial scans indicate." "Commander, I am detecting 847 vessels of unknown configuration. Technology appears consistent with human design parameters." Zethkar felt his blood temperature drop. 800 vessels? The intelligence reports indicated that the entire human military consisted of fewer than 500 ships, most of them small patrol craft suited only for system defense. This display of force was impossible according to every assessment his intelligence services had provided. "Gravek, are you certain of the count?" Zethkar asked, hoping for a sensor malfunction rather than the alternative. "Confirmed, Commander. 847 vessels ranging from destroyer to dreadnought class. They are arranging themselves in a standard intimidation formation around our position. Communication request incoming on standard diplomatic frequencies." Zethkar stared at the tactical display, watching as the human fleet deployed with military precision that belied their supposed primitive nature. The formation was textbook perfect, with overlapping fields of fire that could target every hegemony installation simultaneously. Whoever commanded this force possessed significant tactical expertise. "Put the communication through," Zethkar ordered, settling into his command throne with forced calm. Perhaps this was some sort of bluff, an attempt to intimidate the hegemony into releasing the specimens without actual conflict. The main viewer activated, revealing the face of a human female wearing military insignia. Her dark eyes burned with an intensity that made Zethkar unconsciously step backward. When she spoke, her voice carried the cold authority of absolute command. "I am Admiral Sarah Chin of the Human Defense Fleet. You are Commander Zethkar, the individual responsible for the attack on Research Station New Horizon and the kidnapping of 23 human children. You will return our young immediately, unharmed and ready for transport. You have exactly 1 hour to comply." Zethkar recovered his composure, drawing on centuries of hegemony superiority over lesser species. "Admiral Chen, I am indeed Commander Zethkar of the 3rd Expansion Fleet. Your juveniles are safe and receiving proper education in civilized behavior. They are becoming productive members of the galactic community under hegemony guidance. You should be grateful for this intervention." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes that made Zethkar's survival instincts scream warnings. "Commander, you seem to be operating under several misconceptions. First, those are not your specimens, they are our children, and we will have them back. Second, this is not a negotiation or a diplomatic consultation. This is a demand backed by the largest military force ever assembled by a single species." "Admiral," Zethkar replied, forcing confidence into his voice, "you are clearly emotional about this situation. Perhaps if you understood the benefits your juveniles will receive from hegemony integration." 59 minutes and 30 seconds, Admiral Chen interrupted. "That is how much time you have left to return our children before we demonstrate why threatening human young is a fatal error in judgment." Zethkar gestured to his communications officer to mute the channel. "What is our current defensive status?" "All systems operational, Commander," replied his tactical officer. 300 warships, orbital defense platforms, and the fortress's primary weapons array. Even with their numerical advantage, attacking this position would be suicide for the humans." Zethkar reopened the communication channel. "Admiral Chen, while I admire your determination, you must understand that attacking a hegemony fortress world would be an act of war against one of the galaxy's major powers. The consequences would extend far beyond this single system." Admiral Chen leaned forward, and Zethkar saw something in her expression that chilled his reptilian blood. "Commander, the moment you decided our children were property to be stolen, you declared war on humanity. We are simply here to respond appropriately to your aggression." "This is madness," Zethkar protested. "You would risk galactic war over 23 juveniles? No rational species would." "We are not rational when it comes to our young," Admiral Chen stated with terrifying calm.
We are predators, Commander. Apex predators who have been playing by civilized rules.
You violated those rules when you touched our children.
Now you face the consequences.
Zethkar cut the communication and turned to his command staff.
Alert all defensive positions. The humans appear to be serious about this confrontation.
Prepare for possible combat operations. Commander, interjected Intelligence Officer Draktor, our psychological profiles indicate that human pack bonding extends to their juveniles, but surely they wouldn't risk their entire military for such a small number. Look at that fleet formation, Zethkar snapped, gesturing toward the tactical display.
Does that appear to be a bluff?
They built 800 warships in 3 weeks and brought them here to demand the return of their specimens.
Either humans are the most irrational species in the galaxy, or we have fundamentally misunderstood their nature.
The communication channel reopened on its own, Admiral Chen's face reappearing on the main viewer.
45 minutes, Commander. I suggest you use the time wisely.
Zethkar found himself staring into the human's eyes, seeing something there that his species' own evolutionary history recognized, the cold fury of a mother protecting her offspring. In that moment, he began to understand that the hegemony had made a terrible miscalculation. Admiral, Zethkar said carefully, perhaps we can reach some accommodation. The hegemony is prepared to negotiate compensation for the juvenile's return, resources or technology that would benefit your species, Commander, Admiral Chen interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. My son is 12 years old.
His name is Marcus. He loves astronomy and wants to be an explorer when he grows up.
3 weeks ago, your people fitted him with neural restraints and began erasing his personality to replace it with loyalty to your empire.
Zethkar felt his confidence evaporating as he recognized the implications of that statement. He had kidnapped the offspring of the human military commander.
The tactical error was staggering. You have 30 minutes to return Marcus and his 22 companions, Admiral Chen continued. Unharmed, unaltered, and ready for immediate transport to our vessels. If you refuse, I will personally ensure that your species serves as an example to any others who might consider threatening human children. The communication ended, leaving Zethkar staring at a blank screen while his command staff exchanged nervous glances. The fortress's artificial intelligence spoke into the silence. Commander, tactical analysis suggests that the human fleet possesses sufficient firepower to overwhelm our defensive systems. Their formation indicates advanced military doctrine and significant combat experience.
Zethkar turned to his communications officer. Connect me to the conditioning facilities.
I need to speak with the integration supervisors immediately.
The viewer activated again, showing the reptilian features of Supervisor Kralven, one of the hegemony's most experienced juvenile integration specialists.
Behind him, Zethkar could see the sterile chambers where captured young from dozens of species underwent neural conditioning.
Commander, Kralven reported, the human specimens are responding well to integration protocols.
Another 3 weeks should complete the basic conditioning, with full loyalty implantation requiring approximately. Release them, Zethkar ordered.
Kralven's 4 eyes widened in shock. Commander?
The specimens are valuable assets, their neural patterns show exceptional potential for. Release them immediately, Zethkar repeated.
Remove all neural restraints, reverse any conditioning that has been applied, and prepare them for transport.
Sir, that is highly irregular.
The hegemony has never returned integrated specimens to their origin species.
The precedent would undermine our entire expansion. Supervisor, Zethkar interrupted, look at your tactical displays.
Tell me what you see. Kralven activated his station's sensor feed, his expression changing as he absorbed the magnitude of the human fleet surrounding their position. That is not possible.
No species can construct such a force in mere weeks.
The humans can, and they did.
They built 800 warships for the specific purpose of retrieving their juveniles. Release the specimens now, or we will all be dead within the hour.
Kralven hesitated. Commander, the High Command will never approve such capitulation.
Our entire empire depends on maintaining the perception of strength.
If we yield to human demands, if we don't yield to human demands, there won't be a hegemony left to worry about perception, Zethkar snapped. Look at their formation, Supervisor. They're not here to negotiate or posture.
They're here to retrieve their young, and they will burn this entire system to accomplish that goal. As if summoned by his words, Admiral Chan's voice echoed through the fortress's communication systems. 15 minutes, Commander.
My weapons officers are growing impatient.
Zethkar made the most difficult decision of his career.
All defensive units, stand down.
Do not target human vessels unless they fire first.
Supervisor, you have 10 minutes to prepare all human juveniles for transport.
Full medical scans, complete reversal of any neural modifications, and personal effects returned. Commander, his tactical officer protested, the High Command will view this as treason. Your career, your family's honor, will be meaningless if we're all dead, Zethkar finished.
The humans have demonstrated that they will fight a galactic war to protect their young.
We have two choices, return the specimens and hope they leave peacefully, or fight 800 warships and see our world burn to ash. The next 10 minutes passed in frantic activity as hegemony personnel raced to comply with Zethkar's orders. In the conditioning facilities, Supervisor Kralven personally oversaw the removal of neural restraints from 23 human children, his movements urgent as he watched the countdown timer Admiral Chen had provided. Marcus Chen was the first to be freed from his restraints, the 12-year-old boy blinking in confusion as his suppressed memories and emotions returned. Around him, his companions underwent the same process, their young minds slowly recovering from 3 weeks of neural suppression.
Where are we?
Marcus asked, his voice weak but determined. You are aboard a hegemony vessel, young human, Kralven replied, his professional demeanor cracking under the pressure.
But, you are being returned to your people. Your species has come to retrieve you. Marcus's eyes widened. My mom. Admiral Chen? Among others, Kralven confirmed.
Your people have brought a substantial military force to ensure your safe return.
As the children were prepared for transport, Zethkar opened a final communication channel to the human flagship.
Admiral Chan's face appeared on his viewer, her expression unchanged but somehow more terrifying in its absolute calm.
Admiral, Zethkar said, the juveniles are being prepared for immediate transport. All neural modifications have been reversed, and they are unharmed.
Confirmed, Admiral Chen replied after a moment, presumably receiving verification from her own sensors.
Transport will commence in 5 minutes. Commander, you and your people have made the wise choice.
Zethkar found himself asking the question that would haunt him for the rest of his career, Admiral, would you really have destroyed this entire system for 23 juveniles?
Admiral Chen's smile was utterly without warmth. Commander, I would have burned the galaxy. Those are our children. There is no force in existence more dangerous than a human parent protecting their young.
Remember that lesson well, and share it with the rest of your empire.
The transport operation proceeded flawlessly, with human shuttles collecting the freed children under the watchful eyes of 800 warships.
As the last child was safely aboard Admiral Chen's flagship, Zethkar felt a mixture of relief and profound unease. The humans had their young back, but the implications of this encounter would reshape the balance of galactic power.
Admiral Chen, Zethkar called as the human fleet began withdrawing to safe distance, what assurance do I have that this ends here? That your people won't seek further retribution? Admiral Chen's final words echoed through the Hegemony Command Center. Commander, the Hegemony will never again target human children.
You will spread word throughout your empire that human young are off limits, forever and under all circumstances. If even one human child disappears under suspicious circumstances, we will hold your entire species accountable.
Do you understand?
I understand, Zethkar replied, knowing he had just agreed to terms that would fundamentally alter his empire's expansion policies.
Good. And, Commander? Thank you for making the right choice.
Your wisdom may have prevented a war that would have consumed half the galaxy. As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying away the rescued children and leaving hegemony space forever changed, Zethkar contemplated the report he would have to send to the High Command. The hegemony had just suffered its first major diplomatic defeat in 3 centuries, not through military conquest or economic pressure, but through the simple act of stealing the wrong species' children.
The galaxy would never again underestimate the fury of human parents protecting their young.
6 months after the rescue operation at XK-739, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Defense Command, watching as the final components of the Sol system's defensive grid were put into place. Massive orbital fortresses, each larger than the old lunar colonies, formed a protective shell around Earth and her sister worlds. Fighter squadrons patrolled the system's edge in formations that had become the new standard for human space defense. The galaxy had changed dramatically since the confrontation with the hegemony. Word of humanity's response to the kidnapping had spread through every major civilization, carried by traders, diplomats, and intelligence networks. The message was simple and terrifying: humans would go to war over their children, and they possessed the industrial capacity to make good on that threat. Admiral, called Commander Torres, her aide-de-camp, the Galactic Council delegation has arrived for the Security Summit. They're requesting immediate audience. Sarah nodded, her attention still fixed on the defensive installations that now made human space the most heavily fortified region of the galaxy.
Send them to Conference Room Alpha. And, Commander?
Make sure they see the tactical displays on their way through. I want them to understand exactly what they're dealing with. As Sarah made her way through the command station, she observed the controlled efficiency that had become humanity's new normal. Every corridor buzzed with activity as military personnel, defense contractors, and civilian administrators worked together to maintain the largest military infrastructure ever constructed. The transformation had been expensive, requiring resources from every human world, but the alternative was unthinkable. The conference room contained representatives from 12 major galactic civilizations, their various forms creating a diverse gathering of worried faces and concerned body language. At the head of the table sat Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic, whose crystalline features reflected his species' distress at the current state of galactic affairs.
Admiral Chen, Ambassador Veltar began as Sarah entered the room. We must discuss the current military buildup in human space.
The Galactic Council is deeply concerned about the destabilizing effect of your expansion. Sarah took her seat at the opposite end of the table, her expression calm but her eyes hard. Ambassador, please clarify what you mean by destabilizing.
We are defending our territory and our people from potential threats.
I would think the Council would support such reasonable precautions. Reasonable, interjected Ambassador Kortheke of the hegemony, his reptilian features twisted with bitter resentment.
You have constructed the largest military force in galactic history.
Your expansion threatens the balance of power that has maintained peace for centuries.
Sarah's smile carried no warmth whatsoever. Ambassador Kortheke, your empire attempted to enslave human children.
The fact that you now feel threatened by our defensive measures suggests that the balance of power you mention was never intended to protect species like humanity. Ambassador Veltar raised a crystalline hand to prevent the hegemony representative from responding. Admiral, while the Council recognizes that the hegemony's actions were inappropriate, your response has created a situation where every major power feels compelled to increase their own military capabilities. We are seeing an arms race that could lead to galactic war. Then, perhaps, Sarah replied calmly, the major powers should have intervened when human children were being kidnapped instead of waiting for us to handle the situation ourselves.
The room fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in.
Sarah continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had reshaped galactic politics through sheer force of will.
The Council had 3 weeks to pressure the hegemony into returning our children.
You chose diplomatic protests and bureaucratic delays while our young underwent neural conditioning designed to erase their humanity. Ambassador Ithera of the Voidwalkers spoke for the first time, her ethereal form flickering slightly as she focused her attention. Admiral Chen, we understand the emotional impact of the kidnapping, but your current military posture extends far beyond what would be necessary for defensive purposes. Your fleets patrol neutral space, your intelligence networks operate throughout the galaxy, and your diplomatic demands carry implicit threats of military action. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying the assembled representatives with the calculating gaze of a predator evaluating potential threats. Ambassador Ithera, let me explain humanity's new position in galactic affairs. For over a century, we operated under the assumption that membership in the galactic community provided protection for our people. We believed that treaties, diplomatic protocols, and council oversight would prevent aggression against human civilians. She activated a holographic display showing the research station New Horizon before its destruction. This belief proved to be dangerously naive. When the hegemony decided to harvest our children, none of our supposed protections mattered. The council offered sympathy and procedural delays while our young were tortured and conditioned for slavery. The display shifted to show the human fleet surrounding the hegemony fortress world. We learned that in galactic politics, protection comes from strength, not from the goodwill of neighbors. So we became strong enough to protect ourselves, and we will remain strong enough to deter future aggression. Ambassador Kortheke's translator rendered his species equivalent of bitter laughter. Admiral, your strength has created a situation where species throughout the galaxy live in fear of human retaliation for perceived slights. Your people respond to diplomatic disputes with military threats. Sarah's expression hardened. Ambassador, provide one example of humanity using military force for anything other than the protection of human lives and territory. The hegemony representative fell silent, unable to cite any aggressive human actions beyond the rescue operation that had shattered his empire's confidence. Ambassador Veltar attempted to steer the conversation toward compromise. Admiral, the Council proposes a gradual reduction of military forces throughout the galaxy, beginning with human space. In exchange, we can establish stronger protections for civilian populations and more robust enforcement mechanisms. No, Sarah interrupted. The Council had its chance to protect human civilians and failed. We will not reduce our military capabilities based on promises from the same institutions that allowed our children to be kidnapped. Ambassador Ithera flickered with agitation. Then, what do you propose, Admiral? The current situation is unsustainable. Fear of human retaliation is driving military buildups throughout the galaxy. Eventually, this tension will lead to conflict. Sarah stood and walked to the conference room's large viewport, which offered a clear view of the orbital defense platforms surrounding Earth. What I propose is very simple: universal recognition that the young of all species are protected under galactic law, with enforcement mechanisms that have actual teeth. She turned back to face the assembled representatives. The hegemony operated freely for centuries, harvesting children from primitive species because those species lacked the military power to resist. They were allowed to continue because their victims were weak and their actions didn't threaten the interests of major powers. Sarah activated another display, this one showing intelligence reports on hegemony activities throughout the galaxy. Our investigation revealed that over the past century, the hegemony harvested children from 17 different species. Hundreds of thousands of young minds stolen and conditioned for slavery. Where was the Galactic Council's concern for destabilizing effects then? The room remained silent as the assembled diplomats absorbed the full scope of the hegemony's crimes. Sarah continued, pressing her advantage. Humanity's military buildup serves a simple purpose: ensuring that no species ever again considers our young to be acceptable targets. If that buildup frightens other powers into reconsidering their own policies toward weaker species, then it serves an additional beneficial purpose. Ambassador Veltar's crystalline features shifted color, indicating deep thoughtfulness in his species. Admiral, are you suggesting that humanity intends to serve as galactic enforcer for the protection of all species young? I'm suggesting that humanity will protect human young, and we will support any species that requires assistance in protecting their own young, Sarah clarified. We have no desire for territorial expansion or resource acquisition. We want only to ensure that what happened to our children never happens again, to any species. Ambassador Kortheke made a sound that his translator rendered as disgust. You speak of protection while maintaining the largest military force in galactic history. Your fleets patrol beyond human space, your intelligence networks monitor our communications, your industrial capacity continues expanding despite the resolution of the kidnapping crisis. Sarah's smile was predatory. Ambassador, your empire spent centuries preying on species too weak to resist. Now you complain that humanity refuses to be weak enough for predation. I find your concerns unconvincing. The hegemony has ceased all juvenile acquisition activities, Kortheke protested. We have implemented new protocols for civilian interaction and established oversight committees after you were forced to do so by the threat of human retaliation, Sarah interrupted. Your empire changed its policies not from moral awakening, but from fear of consequences. That fear is the only thing protecting other species from future hegemony aggression. Ambassador Ithera attempted to mediate.
Surely there must be some compromise that addresses both human security concerns and galactic stability.
Perhaps a mutual defense agreement. The galaxy has proven that mutual defense agreements are worthless when they conflict with political convenience, Sarah stated flatly. Humanity will defend itself and assist others as we see fit, based on our own moral judgments rather than institutional protocols. Commander Torres entered the conference room and whispered something in Sarah's ear. The Admiral's expression shifted slightly, taking on a satisfaction that made several ambassadors shift uncomfortably. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," Sarah announced, "I've just received confirmation that the Tau Epsilon colonies have completed integration into the Human Defense Network. They will receive the full protection of human military forces in exchange for industrial and scientific cooperation." Ambassador Veltar leaned forward urgently. "Admiral, the Tau Epsilon colonies are outside human territorial space. This represents a significant expansion of your influence. This represents a group of small, peaceful worlds choosing to ally with humanity rather than remain vulnerable to predatory empires," Sarah corrected. "They approached us requesting protection after learning about the hegemony's century of child harvesting. Apparently, they preferred human military patrols to the risk of their own young being stolen." The implications rippled through the assembled representatives. If humanity continued forming protective alliances with smaller species, their effective sphere of influence could encompass dozens of star systems. The balance of galactic power would shift dramatically in humanity's favor. "This is exactly what we feared," Ambassador Kortheke muttered. "Human expansion disguised as protection." "Ambassador," Sarah replied coldly, "the Tau Epsilon colonies asked for our protection after your empire's activities made them fear for their children's safety. If you object to the result, perhaps you should have refrained from creating the problem." Sarah returned to her seat, her demeanor shifting from diplomatic courtesy to barely controlled menace. "Let me be absolutely clear about humanity's position in galactic affairs. We will never again trust the security of our people to the goodwill of institutions that failed when we needed them most. We will maintain whatever military capabilities we deem necessary for the protection of human lives." She gestured toward the viewport and the defensive installations beyond. "Those orbital platforms carry enough firepower to sterilize planets. Our fleet patrol schedules ensure that human warships can respond to any threat within 72 hours. Our intelligence networks monitor every major power for signs of anti-human activity." The assembled ambassadors absorbed this information with obvious discomfort. Sarah continued, her voice carrying the weight of absolute determination. "We built this capability in 3 weeks when our children were threatened. Imagine what we could build if our entire species was endangered. Imagine the response if any power was foolish enough to attack Earth itself." Ambassador Ithera flickered with what her species expressed as fear. "Admiral, you are describing a scenario where humanity becomes the dominant military power in the galaxy, able to impose its will on any other species. I'm describing a scenario where humanity is strong enough to protect itself and assist others in protecting themselves," Sarah corrected. "The galaxy has always been dominated by military powers. The difference is that humanity's dominance serves the protection of the weak rather than their exploitation." Ambassador Veltar attempted one final diplomatic solution. "Admiral Chen, what would it take for humanity to consider reducing its military posture? What guarantees would satisfy your security concerns?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant as she considered the question. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute finality. "Ambassador, humanity's security concerns will be satisfied when no species in the galaxy needs to fear for their children's safety. When the young of all civilizations are protected not by the mercy of the strong, but by the certainty that harming them will bring swift and terrible retribution." She stood again, indicating that the meeting was concluded. "Until that day arrives, humanity will maintain whatever military capabilities we deem necessary. We will form whatever alliances serve our interests. And we will respond to threats against human lives with whatever force is required to eliminate those threats." As the ambassadors filed out of the conference room, each carrying Sarah's message back to their respective governments, Commander Torres remained behind. "Admiral, that was quite a performance. Do you think they understood the message?"
Sarah returned to the viewport, watching as a squadron of human fighters conducted patrol exercises around the outer defensive ring. Commander, they understood perfectly. The galaxy now knows that humanity protects its own, and we have the strength to make that protection absolute. And the smaller species requesting our protection? Will receive it, Sarah confirmed. The Tau Epsilon colonies are just the beginning. Every species that fears predation will eventually seek human alliance, and will grant it to those who meet our criteria. Commander Torres studied the tactical displays showing human influence spreading through dozens of star systems. Admiral, we're essentially reshaping galactic politics around the principle of protecting the young. Sarah smiled, and, for the first time in months, the expression carried genuine warmth. Commander, 6 months ago, my son was stolen by aliens who viewed him as livestock to be trained. Today, he's safe on Earth, pursuing his dream of becoming an explorer. Every species in the galaxy now knows that human young are absolutely protected, and dozens of other species have requested similar protection for their own children. She turned back to face her aide. If reshaping galactic politics was the price of ensuring that no parent ever again experiences what I went through, then it was a price worth paying. Outside the viewport, human warships continued their eternal patrol, guardians of a new galactic order where the strong protected the weak rather than exploiting them. The galaxy had learned that humans were not the naive, peaceful explorers they had appeared to be. They were apex predators who loved their young enough to burn the stars for them. And the galaxy would never be the same.